ICCC to scrutinize airline takeover deal. Opposition called for removal of UBS loan inquiry. And 1 week left in COVID-19 SOE.
This is National EMTV News with Helen Seah.
Good evening. This is Wednesday's news. Thanks for your company. The Independent Consumer and Competition Commission, or ICCC, has directed Air Niugini to apply for authorization from the Commission following a proposed application to acquire up to 60% shares in PNG Air. ICCC Commissioner Paulus Ain released a statement announcing that Air Niugini and PNG Air are the only two airline companies providing domestic freights and passenger services in Papua New Guinea, and ICCC will assess this application carefully.
Link PNG Limited, a subsidiary of Air Niugini, has lodged an application seeking to buy 60% shares in PNG Air. The application, lodged with ICCC, is seeking clearance for acquisition. However, ICCC has directed Link PNG to apply for authorization because ICCC believes the proposed transaction is likely to raise serious competition concerns and may not pass the competition test. The statement issued by ICCC Commissioner explains that if ICCC grants authorization, the proposed transaction will proceed and it will not be challenged for a potential breach of the competition law provisions of the Independent Consumer and Competition Commission Amendment Act of 2018. As such, ICCC is now inviting comments and submissions from all parties on this proposed acquisition. All information provided will be treated as public unless the submitter requests confidentiality. Meanwhile, ICCC is expected to assess this application carefully. MTV News has contacted both airlines for a comment on this proposed acquisition. Thaklagunga, National MTV News.
And in news just in, Link PNG has confirmed its bid to acquire some of PNG Air, describing it as a move that will benefit Papua New Guineans and travellers. Nesfund's board has approved the sale of its shares in PNG Air to Link PNG, subject to the Independent Consumer and Competition Commission and other required approvals. Link PNG General Manager Alex Kia said the proposal would be a huge coup for airline passengers, as well as ensuring job security for all the PNG national staff across both airlines and the continuation of the PNG Air brand in our skies. Meanwhile, Papua New Guineans have raised concerns, saying if the acquisition is allowed to go through, there will be no competition, and that is not good for a developing economy. The opposition leader confirmed that security personnel posted along the border of PNG and Indonesia went on strike earlier today in Vanimo town and had the provincial government under siege over lack of due payment for their allowances. Nama says security personnel are entitled to their allowances and that the neglect by the government is criminal.
I confirm that the police and the defense personnel have withdrawn from the post in the border in strike over the unpaid allowances. I also would like to say that they have also put under siege the provincial government building, and which has the governor of the province, Honorable Tony Wawa, and the provincial administration locked in the provincial government building. That's confirmed from Vanimo, and I blame this on the government, on the national government, for failing its part to deliver its promises to our people. We in the province and the districts, we have done our level best to assist the provincial coronavirus task force team. We have gone as far as drawing down from our districts to support the efforts of the provincial team, and it is very sad. And like I said yesterday, the neglect by the national government, the neglect by James Marape and his government is criminal. Soldiers and the policemen are entitled to allowances.
A decision is expected to be handed down in Parliament this time next week as to whether the state of emergency will be extended or lifted. At this stage, PNG has only 8 confirmed cases of COVID-19. The last case reported about a month ago, and all 8 have since recovered. Deputy Controller Paisin Dakulala gave an update on the COVID-19 situation yesterday on day 64.
Encouraged to eat garden food.
Giving an update on the status of COVID-19 yesterday evening at the National Operations Center, the Deputy Controller indicated that in spite of whether the decision on the lockdown continues or not, citizens should start adapting to the new normal.
On this day next week, we should be able to know from the Parliament whether the state of emergency on COVID-19 is to be continued. The state of emergency was declared following the announcement of the first case of COVID-19, and even if the state of emergency ends, this should not stop us from living a new normal life in the context of COVID-19. To ensure we remain COVID-19 free, this message must be reinforced. We must continue to be focused and vigilant in the way we deal with our preventative measures.
On the status of screening for inbound passengers, over 31,000 inbound passengers were screened at both the Jackson's International Airport and seaports of Port Moresby. A little over 8,000 travelers were screened and identified to be monitored regularly by the surveillance team.
Out of that, half of those have been followed up, and the others remain to be followed up. Travelers within the last 24 hours that have come into our country are about 11, and they came in from Cairns.
Adding that for citizens and residents stranded abroad, the government is working to bring them back to PNG. This includes the 127 in Fiji.
The risk of COVID-19 spreading to PNG from other countries is high, as you heard from this update, because many countries around us are continuing to report new cases.
Annette Cora, National EMTV News.
Opposition leader Belden Nama today came out in yet another media conference calling on Prime Minister James Marape to immediately disband the UBS Loan Commission of Inquiry, stating that it was a waste of time and public money. He referred to the existing Ombudsman Commission report on the UBS loan saga and for law enforcement agencies like the Ombudsman Commission and the National Fraud and Anti-Corruption Directorate to implement its findings and recommendations.
What was initially queried by Deputy Opposition Leader Dr. Alan Marat on the necessity of setting up the Royal Commission of Inquiry and the specific projected cost of 28 million kina, it was then stated by the Prime Minister that the Commission of Inquiry was set up to look at the entire chain from the moment the funds were procured and what the circumstances were that gave rise to the procurement of the fund. These responses from the Prime Minister, Nama says, are careless and irresponsible.
There is absolutely no need for a commission of inquiry into the UBS loan deal. Any questions arising from whence the paperwork started to procure this 3 billion kina loan from the UBS in Australia or in Singapore. All those questions from the beginning when the paper trail started to the end as to how the monies were used and dispersed have been fully covered, investigated, and proper findings and recommendations have been made by the Ombudsman's Commission. I find James Marape's response to be flampant, careless, and irresponsible of a national leader, which is symptomatic of his entire approach to governance in this country.
Stressing that it was a deliberate waste of time to avert action on the Ombudsman Commission's report by commissioning a second exorbitant commission of inquiry when money could have been better utilized elsewhere.
We in the opposition say, what kind of a response is that from a prime minister? This is public money and not James Marape's private money we are talking about. 28 million kina is also a lot of money. You cannot compare 28 million kina to 3 billion. 28 million kina can also be used properly. Instead of instituting another commission of inquiry, which is a waste of time and waste of people's money.
Highlighting that the final report was released in December 2018, tendered in Parliament in 2019, debated briefly and accepted by Parliament at the March 2020 sitting, and that the purpose of the second Commission of Inquiry is to hold off the investigation for possible prosecution of those involved, including the Prime Minister himself.
Well, in the Ombudsman Commission's final report and the findings and recommendations of the Ombudsman Commission report, James Marape is one of the major, or if not, the person that has been highly recommended for him to be referred to Ombudsman Commission, to the Leadership Tribunal, or for investigations by National Fraud and Anti-Corruption for his involvement in the entire exercise. In fact, he is a signatory to the last instrument, just like what he did in the procurement of the Israeli generators, where he signed off Section 61 instrument. Has Marape even read the report itself? Or has he just looked at these recommendations where it recommended for him to be investigated and referred to Leadership Tribunal? And he panicked and decided to subvert or pervert the course of justice.
Nama called for all members of Parliament to take heed and to see that the second Commission of Inquiry is a deliberate waste of time and money, and to join the opposition to call for its disbanding. Annette Kora, National EMTV News.
EMTV sought comments from Prime Minister James Marape through his office, and we are yet to get a response. You're watching National EMTV News. We'll be back with more after these messages. Stay with us. Welcome back. For too long, PNG LNG impacted villages have waited to receive their development levies. 2 million kina is to be paid to Hiri Special Purpose Authority, who represent the 4 impacted villages. Today, the first payment of 1 million kina was made by the Central Provincial Government. This is the first time HSPA has received their payment.
As a result of joint efforts from the Hiri Special Purpose Authority and the Central Provincial Government, we have collectively agreed to an initial payment to Hiri Special Purpose Authority of 2 million kina in accordance with the sharing agreements stated above.
Especially the 4 villages that have sacrificed their land, their hunting ground, their fishing ground, their livelihood to the development of Papua New Guinea through the LNG plant site. The project itself is a very big project that also affects my people's way of survival.
Is a very, very painful, I might add, road that we took. And today marks the beginning of a journey that me and my board are going to be working together with our good governor. He has given us support, and today marks the product of that support, and we appreciate that.
It took us maybe more than 7 years, 8 years now to be where we are. And I want to commend the LNG President for your efforts into working on this partnership.
Yanguru Sausia MP Richard Maru has encouraged locals in the Koboi Bus area and West Yanguru LLG to not demand for compensation when vital government services are built in their community. Instead, Maru urged locals to free up a piece of land so the District Development Authority can build a police station and a healthcare centre in Koboi Bus. These projects have been approved for construction in 2021 and will be funded through the DSIP funds.
Located near Winge, Koboi Bus is a small community that is home to over 5,000 men, women and children. It takes about an hour to reach Yanguru station by foot, and the only form of government service in this area is the Paul Malmal High School, which was recently built.
So shorty my area time machine come no Paul Malmal milaki mi level machine ba mi talk level mo gada housing police station over service lo one block. So Vice President, you take ownership. Now you want to council application. Now you have total one play area, service center, high school staff one block, good play area, flat play area, big play area. Me like put more service lo one block. And it's simple. We will build a hospital and the police station next to MEC. No problem.
In a visit to the area, the local MP cut a ribbon to mark the start of construction for the Bubuama Bridge. A vital infrastructure which was halted following disagreements between the locals and the contractor. The bridge, once completed, will serve as a vital link for local farmers to bring their cash crops to town and allow students at Paul Malmal access to school facilities during rainy season.
So, sometimes commitment and make work is up that's all. Ambition are beside me losing thing. But now me remind me yet of son. Me like a priest from me must come up or son. Now, only they talk finish, headmaster talk finish. Time already pull down. Libra start coastal mountain. Anytime rain pull down, tide come up. Online do Libra upside of Kumun. I'm all lucky style here now. Stop on them hungry. Waiting time 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock when time tide to finish. Only go.
The establishment of critical government services like law and order and healthcare facilities in this part of the district reflects the DDA's 5-term development goals to improve the living standards for all locals in all 4 LLGs in the Yanguru Sausia district. Thekla Gunga, National EMTV News.
Local farmers and small to medium entrepreneurs in the Yanguru Sausia district will no longer travel to Wewak town to access banking services offered by Bank South Pacific. This follows the near completion of the upgrade of the rural BSP branch in Yanguru Station to a full branch. With over 6,000 customer base within Yanguru Sausia, the aim is to provide all banking services like access to ATM machines, loan offers and opening of bank accounts for farmers and locals in Yanguru. With the increased opportunities in generating an income in the agriculture and livestock sector, these banking services will most likely serve people from Angaram, Maprik and Wasera-Gawi districts also.
The rural branch does not have the full composite of products that you would have in a normal branch. They don't offer loans here. They only take small deposits, and they, in terms of withdrawals, they only allow you to go to very small amounts, sometimes up to 300 a day, which is totally insufficient. We already have over 9,000 clients banking here. So a bulk of our people have to go to Wewak every day for banking. To jump on a PMV and go to Wewak is 15 kina one way. So you waste the whole day and you spend 30 kina just to get to a bank in Wewak.
Yeah, customer last year 7,000 plus. So no problem as reach finish 10,000 because people open account every day, people open 20, 30 plus above.
People in a remote village in Menyamya have not had access to health services for the past 2 years. This is according to a male nurse who accompanied a team from the Lay Catholic Diocese to Piwi village in Menyamya last week. The trip is part of the Lay Catholic Diocese regular medical patrols to remote parts of Morbe province.
This is the St. Matthew's Catholic Station in Piwi Village in Menyama District. It is one remote area in the district where people depend entirely on church assistance for basic services like education and health. Last week, the Catholic Diocese in Ley took a team of nurses from the Center of Mercy on one of its regular medical patrols to this remote part of Morobe province. Cornelius Kandoro is a nurse from Bumbu Health Center in Ley who was part of the medical team. He visited this area 2 years ago. Cornelius discovered in his visit last week that locals had no record of access to any medical services since his last visit.
We've been come stop walk lab 2018. Now this la card lo patients or patients when we looking more na writing this la history go down this la same patient writing lo me stop antabe no ga one bla new bla history can all put him antap same sick or me been writing antabe I mean up now me come can me looking so a minimum no ga one plus service health service all been kisi hard straight low back email one plug helping health service.
The Catholic Diocese in Ley has regular medical patrols to remote parts of Morobe. Ley Catholic Diocese Bishop Rosario Menezes led a medical team on a 15-hour trip to get to Piwi. A journey, according to him, was a request from locals during his last visit to the station. Locals, especially mothers, were overjoyed, saying the visit was the answer to their plea for health services.
Bishop kami first time kami mi pla tokong se mi pla mama ya mi pla sa Philippines ta mi pla la karim baby tu em road the mountain na lot bagarap na on man pla sa hat lo karim mi pla go lausik o se na mi pla tokong se mi pla like him liklik gate post pla mi pla.
Bishop Rosario said the diocese is planning 4 more medical patrols to other remote areas in the province. He is appealing for assistance from the district and provincial health authorities to assist the diocese to deliver health and education services to remote places like Piwi. Charlene Airy, National EMTV News, Ley.
A Chinese national who was arrested and charged for breaching SOE orders 3 weeks ago in Ley appeared in the district court today. During the last hearing, her lawyer made 2 applications to allow the defendant to continue trading and also have the bail amount reduced to 2,000 kina each charge instead of 10,000 kina. Today, the magistrate refused both applications, saying the defendant will not be allowed to continue selling liquor and the request for bail variation will have to be left until the end of the trial. The prosecutor also made a cross-application to amend the charges. However, this was objected by the defendant's counsel. The defendant was arrested for breaching SOE Order 10, which restricted the sale of alcohol to hotels, restaurants and wholesalers with valid liquor licenses, and also for obstructing arrest. The defendant's counsel said in court that the defendant employs up to 30 staff at her shop and makes about 2,000 kina daily. However, the shop remains closed since the arrest. The case was adjourned to tomorrow, Thursday at 9:30 a.m. And now looking at the NASFund market report, the kina opened unchanged at $0.29 in the interbank market. At Bank South Pacific, your kina is buying $0.2825 $0.4218 Australian dollars, $0.24960 euro and 29.73 Japanese yen. Looking at commodity prices at New York close, gold is trading lower, coffee and cocoa closed higher, while copper closed lower. Palm oil and copper closed higher, crude oil is trading higher. And on the stock market, the Dow Jones closed at 529.95 points higher. The ASX 200 is trading at 164.4 points higher, and the All Ordinaries is trading at 23.5 points higher. You're watching National EMTV News. We'll take a short break. When we return, we'll bring you stories making headlines overseas. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the news. Turning overseas, Brazil has recorded a highly deadly coronavirus death toll than the United States. The country reported over 1,000 deaths on Tuesday, bringing the nationwide toll to over 24,000.
This is a landing of last resort, seeking salvation in a coronavirus hotbed. Tiny planes bring the sickest COVID patients from hundreds of miles away, deep in the Amazon, to Manaus, Brazil's worst-hit city, and to a hospital bed. A journey most make alone, from which some won't go home. This is what doing well looks like on these flights, moving. The woman on board, struggling, motionless. Once, they had to intubate a patient in mid-air.
It's very hard. You carry a weight that you don't see. Every time I carry this weight, I feel like I carry this weight.
They arrive in a city mired not only in death, but also fury. Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro has made light of the virus and called the mayor here a piece of excrement for digging these mass graves. They had little choice here when the bodies started piling up. This month, they buried 103 in one day, digging at night. Even in 2 hours, 5 come. One by one, laid in the trench. Many mourners say theirs aren't coronavirus deaths, but it's hard to know here. The official numbers in Brazil don't tell the whole picture, partly because there isn't enough testing. You can see that here. These are those who've died and have tested positive for coronavirus, but these graves, staggeringly, well, they're the ones that they suspect may have died of the disease.
To Lebanon, during the coronavirus pandemic, the financial crisis is pushing thousands of migrant workers past the breaking point. Here's CNN with the details.
There are times Juliana's mother thinks of giving her up. Maybe someone else can give her 4-year-old a good life. It's unthinkable. But what do you do when you have nothing? When you would do anything to protect your child? A few months ago, this single mother was making just about enough to pay rent and feed her daughter. But since the coronavirus lockdown, Aya's had no work. She hasn't been able to pay rent in 2 months and is now facing eviction. She slept on the streets back home in Ethiopia and here in Beirut. The thought of her daughter being homeless keeps her up at night. Since my childhood, I've had a very bad life, she says. I don't want my daughter to have the same life that I've had. Like Aya, an estimated 250,000 migrant women, most from Ethiopia, came to Lebanon to be housemaids, making as little as $150 a month. Many have endured years of abuse and exploitation, but they've experienced nothing like what they're going through right now. The coronavirus lockdown hit an economy already on the verge of collapse, and now most Lebanese can no longer afford domestic workers, leaving thousands of migrant women jobless and penniless.
They are strong women and helping their family, taking care of their family, and paying their education, building a house. Those women don't have even food on the table, and they're asking for help to feed their kids and to live, to survive.
Yimer set up her group to empower Ethiopian domestic workers. Now her volunteers are working around the clock to feed them, relying on donations through crowdfunding.
Ukraine is one of the world's leading destinations for commercial surrogacy, but coronavirus travel restrictions have affected more than 100 newborn surrogate babies currently stranded in the country, awaiting the arrival of their parents.
Manu is 8 weeks old and has never met his parents. He was born to a surrogate in Ukraine and is one of more than 100 babies left stranded here by the coronavirus. This is where Manu should be sleeping. His biological parents have prepared a room ready for him 13,000 kilometers away in Argentina. Jose and Flavia decided to try surrogacy in Ukraine after years of failed pregnancies and fertility treatment. But just as they were about to travel to Kiev for Manu's birth, disaster struck. Ukraine closed its borders and Argentina cancelled all commercial flights.
Son semanas que se hacen angustiantes, se hacen en algún momento con mucha esperanza. Y otras nosotros no.
Иди сюда, покажу малыша, который был в животике.
This is the other side of Ukrainian surrogacy. Luciana is a student from a poor part of the country. 2 weeks ago, she was paid $16,000 after she gave birth to a healthy boy for an American couple. Unlike most parts of the world, that's completely legal here.
Do you love that baby?
Вообще просто так интерес, любопытство, любви материнской, я повторюсь, у меня нет. У меня есть мой ребенок, за которого я должна переживать.
Hi. Hi. Hi Flavia. Hi Jose. How you doing?
We helped arrange a video call so Manu's parents could see their son.
The phone, and this is Olga. We've got Manuel.
Hola. Está dormido.
Hola, Manu.
Hola.
Hola, Manu.
Está dormido. Hola, mi amor.
Que estamos moviendo montañas para llegar a Manu. Estamos haciendo todo. No bajamos los brazos nunca. Arroro, mire. Arroro, sol. Arroro, pedazo.
After 10 minutes, Manu dozes off to the sound of his father's voice. Jose and Flavia are now pinning their hopes on catching a special flight from Argentina to Europe. Manu is taken back to the room where he sleeps with 30 other babies. All of them waiting for this to be over and for their parents to come and claim them.
Now we take a look at the U.S. public health facts on the ground as states reopen. Officials are making tough choices. In some places, hospitals continue to cope with the pandemic.
We're nearing 100,000 dead and we're reopening. While the rate of new cases still climbs in 17 states, including California.
We are walking into the unknown, the untested, literally and figuratively, and we have to be guided by the data.
Among the 20 states seeing new case numbers fall, New York. Some traders today back on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. It's been more than 2 months.
It's a great sign, it's a great symbol of our economy getting back in motion.
Mandatory masks, and everyone must sign a waiver stating they know the risks.
They wanted to get back to business, but they wanted to be smart, and they're doing it in a way that keeps people safe.
Long Island starts to reopen tomorrow. New Rochelle, that early New York hotspot, starts today.
I think the people of New Rochelle take special satisfaction in reaching this milestone, and we are cautiously optimistic.
Will there be a fallout from that now infamous Memorial Day party in the Ozarks? Well, we'll find out in a week or two.
The responsible thing to do now is to self-quarantine. Don't put others at risk. Don't put your loved ones at risk. And make better decisions moving forward.
Neighbouring Arkansas, a month after reopening began, now suffering a sharp spike in cases.
I could get killed by COVID today, or I could get hit by a bus or a car tomorrow.
Meanwhile, in Vernon, California, more than 150 workers at this meat processing plant have tested positive. Outbreaks reported at 8 other facilities in the city. The union wants the plant closed for cleaning.
The spikes keep coming, and it's sort of like Amity Island. There's an invisible, insidious, deadly shark out there, and it's time to get people out of the water to figure out what's going on.
CDC numbers show nearly 80% of COVID deaths are among the 65 and older, but interestingly, nearly 80% of cases are in the under 65s. A 10th potential vaccine is now moving into human trials, and today Merck announced it's also entering the race. But an effective vaccine is still far from guaranteed.
And Trukai Sports is next. Elijah Lavette joins us at the sports desk.
Thanks, Helen. Sporting venues got a lift in preparation for resumption of matches. I'll have that story and more in Trukai Sports after the break.
Trukai Sports.
Welcome to Trukai Sports. With sports to resume by June this year, they will be required to build fences around the sporting area. This is to ensure there is one way in and out to record the number of people in the venues. The PNG Sports Foundation Back to Sports protocol states national federations will have to build a fence around the sporting arena to ensure there is one way in and out of the venue. Funding has been allocated for national federations to start building fences around their sporting fields.
We are putting together a budget for the fencing component. Yes, we've already talked about that. Yes, that's important. First and foremost, we are going to make sure that our entry, which is the entry into, there's only one entry.
This is to allow for contact tracing if there may be any outbreak of any sort.
Bissini Precinct and the Sir John Guy Stadium are the two immediate ones that we'll need to ensure that our gate is properly fixed up and up to that standard of where we want to have practiced that process of engaging members coming through.
Contact sports will also have to adhere to the International Federation's protocols. This will be the new normal going forward, and people will have to comply with these protocols.
Now that is something that the NF and the VMT have to get together to make those protocols for that particular sport. So what we hopefully will see before June is that all of those protocols for your sport in your venue space will be met and documented, so that is the way forward for you.
To NRL, there's been yet another distraction for the Warriors to overcome in Australia. Their training ground was put out of action due to heavy rainfall, forcing the team to find alternatives.
3 months ago, it was a Warriors fan caught in Central Coast floods.
Can I please get a triple cheeseburger combo, please?
The area prone to flash flooding, but while it wasn't nearly as bad as this yesterday, the actual Warriors woke to some bad news.
Unfortunately, the night before we got 70 odd mils of rain.
The huge downpour meant their stadium training ground was a no-go. After 7 a.m, football manager Dan Floyd was in the car rushing to find an alternative for the 2 p.m. training. After looking at 3 fields, they finally found a public park in nearby Tugra.
The boys down there look after the ground, put some lines on it for us. We're able to get some traffic cones to put up as posts.
At one point, they considered training on a basketball court, and after everything the squad has been through already, the coach is trying to keep spirits high.
Quoting a bit of Bruce Lee to the boys about it yesterday, about you just got to be like water, and so just go with the flow.
Water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend.
They were expecting to crash into former teammate Isaac Luke on Saturday, but the 32-year-old was left out of the Dragon squad despite living up to his nickname at training.
Bully keeps getting a little bit cheeky. I think a few guys keep going to sort him out soon if he keeps carrying on the way he does.
The Warriors just happy to have sorted themselves out after yet another hurdle.
And more stories after the break. Stay with us.
Trukai Sports.
Welcome back to Trukai Sports. To football, the English Premier League clubs will tonight vote on a date to return to training. The top women's players in the UK have been left to wait for next season after the top competitions were cancelled.
Now the women's game can start writing its own chapters.
It's been a season of breaking new ground for the women's game in Britain.
Decent hits, wonderful goal.
Big teams, big crowds, regularly smashing attendance records.
What a crowd we've had today, a record crowd in the WSL, 38,000.
Playing in front of them, 150-cap football Fern Rhea Percival. In her first season at Tottenham Hotspur, the club she supported her whole life.
I mean, to walk out there in front of all those people in a stadium that is, I think, the best I've played in, was amazing.
But the campaign's officially been brought to an abrupt end this week.
It's a hard one one to take, I think. The Olympics obviously getting postponed too. We've been training individually now for I think 8 weeks, 9 weeks, trying to keep ourselves fit and doing our individual training. So to have the season officially cancelled, it's quite hard to take.
Meanwhile, the Premier League presses on with Project Restart, hoping tonight to move to the next stage of contact training. Promises of equality within the game now looking increasingly hollow.
But it is a frustrating topic for me, but at the same time it is what it is. I think I've been playing for so many years now and travelled all around the world playing that I've experienced it over the years, so for me I just get on with it.
Getting on with it, something that's a challenge right now for footballers in the 30-year-old's position. The hope is that an eventual return to play next season will see interest in the Women's Super League pick up where it left off, breaking records and building a stronger game.
Some of New Zealand's top rowers have been busy breaking world records, not on water, but as One News reports, that didn't stop them taking it any less seriously.
An Olympic start line it's not, but even in the confines of his garage, Hamish Bond can't help but go full bore.
I knew once I said I'd do it, but I'd have to do each one justice.
Rowers worldwide taking on a series of indoor tests in lockdown. 131 records were broken, 2 now belong to Bond.
Mine are actually age grade records, so that's the perk of being over 30 now.
Still, rowing nearly 9.5 kilometres in 30 minutes and 1.4 kilometres in just 4 minutes is pretty exceptional, though his favourite achievement was a personal best in the regular racing distance.
Usually if you're doing a 2K test, you have your teammates or the coaches around you yelling you on, egging you on. So it was pretty satisfying at 34 years of age to sit in my garage and do a PB and suffer through a 6-minute test.
Speaking of suffering...
Yeah, I was knackered.
Here's Jackie Kittle after setting a new record of her own, 5K in just over 18 minutes.
It's pretty cool. We're top athletes. We can just jump in the garage and whack out a PB and whack out a world record.
The challenge ahead to do the same back out on the water.
And that ends Trukai Sports. Join Helen for the weather forecast for the next 24 hours when we come back.
Trukai Sports. Trukai Sports.
This weather update is proudly brought to you by MoniPlus. With you always.
A look at the weather forecast for tonight. In the southern region, cloudy periods in Port Moresby, mostly fine weather in Daru and Alutau, cloudy with a few showers in Kerema and fine, although cloudy in Popondetta. In the Mamasu region, mostly fine, although partly cloudy in Lae, cloudy with a few showers in Medang, Wewak and Vanimo. In the New Guinea Islands region, mostly fine weather in Lorengau, Kavieng, Kokoporabao and Kimbe, and cloudy with a chance of a few showers in Buka. And in the Highlands region, cloudy with afternoon showers right across the region in Mount Hagen, Goroka, Kundiawa, Mendi and Wabeg.
The weather update was proudly brought to you by MoniPlus. With you always.
And that's been the news, sport and weather for today, Wednesday, 27th of May 2020. On behalf of the entire EMTV news team right around the country, pleasant viewing. Good night.